Enjoy all of our shows from the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. The OSG Sports app is up and running. Download it today.
I got a lot of problems with you people. Now, you're going to hear about it.
I am the greatest.
You're listening to The Review on the OSG Podcasting Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Review. This is The Review. We are part of the OSG Sports Podcasting Network, and your hosts are us, the online sports guys, OSG J-Dub, OSG Nelson, J Wilkerson 16, and me, OSG Phil. Pretty easy to remember there. Might as well not get tongue-tied and spit this out now. Make sure to keep tabs on what we're doing. You can find us on social media. We're on Facebook at OSG Sports and on Twitter at OSG Sports. If you're watching at home, there's a good chance you're watching this on YouTube. Again, just look up OSG Sports. We're there. We have a phone app too. John, do the honors because it's your favorite thing to do each week.
Yes, it is.
You have to be more specific. There's three of us.
Yeah, come on.
Yes, Mr. Nelson. Please flash the phone. That is our phone app.
Please flash the phone
OSG
only.
Sports
Yeah,
the
really?
OSG Sports phone app. It is free.
There
it
you
has
go.
all of our shows, including our midweek show, The X, hosted by Brother Wilkie, and featuring, among other guests, the Stereo J-Dubs, who will soon have their own separate promo, but that's another story for another day. Guys, week number 3 is in the books for college football, and outside of the games, there's still a whole heck of a lot going on. This week brings news that not only are we getting the Big Ten back in the saddle, we got a whole slate of games starting October 24th.
And what does this tell you about the power of the people of Nebraska?
Dr. Tom, I'm sure, was working the phones.
We thought Ohio State and Michigan was the power base in the Big Ten. I think it's West and Lincoln, Nebraska now.
Yeah, but if you ask the Nebraska folks, Kevin Warren took his revenge when they put the schedule out.
Oh, yeah. Paybacks are hell, right?
You want to play? Okay, let's play.
Yeah. By the way, you're starting your season at Ohio State.
And then you got Wisconsin coming to your place.
How you doing?
Yeah.
And you got Penn State coming in 2 weeks after that.
Good luck making it to 500 in 2020.
For dropping by.
And even the season with Minnesota. So. Crazy.
Excuse me. It's been a really long and winding road to get us to this point. We've talked about this quite a bit in previous episodes as well. Why do you think that we all of a sudden got the Big Ten saying, okay, fine, we'll go ahead and start, we'll play? Is it all money? Is it all health? Is it all of the above? What do you think it is that finally pushed them over the line and say, okay, we need to do this?
All the above, lawsuits, and politics.
Peer pressure.
Yep. Seeing that the ACC and where these guys are playing, that peer pressure. I mean, there's only so long it could hold out with no major hiccup to this point up to week 3.
Exactly. And with the SEC starting up this coming weekend, what would the Big Ten do? I mean, as I've always said, it is 1 and 1A with the SEC, and you've got the rural fan base with these programs, with the majority of those programs, and nothing. I mean, no form of entertainment, no college football to talk about. And then you think about the people in the state of Iowa and Pennsylvania and Ohio. They're seeing other schools and their professional NFL teams play. 40 and slip there, right?
Uh-huh.
It just didn't add up. And you had anger, and you had, again, threats of lawsuits. It was a bad mix, and Kevin Warren was in way over his head, and he had to find a way to dig out of this hole.
Especially with a son who plays in an entirely different conference that just so happened to be going.
And there have been a couple of burps like Appalachian State and some other teams that have had exposure to COVID, and Charlotte, and at least those in North Carolina and some others, but no real major issues. And you got to add the state of Nebraska to that mix of people looking at football being played. And to me, just and how many times can you replay the 2004 bowl games, right? I mean, these networks are just dying for content, and they're seeing it happen. They could not. I mean, I think if they went past another week, there's just no way the Big Ten could have waited any longer. Now you got the Pac-12 and the Mountain West coming behind them. It's just, they had to wait for Kevin Warren to open the door, and now everybody's coming back.
Well, and think of it this way. I mean, you have that particular swath of geography losing their viewing audiences to other conferences. And if you lose them now, then who's to say that you won't lose them permanently? From how things are being presented this year, no matter when, you could have brought things back. So if you're in the B1G footprint and your audience is being shown SEC, Fun Belt, ACC, anybody else, Big 12 football, you're losing those audiences. And with all of the money that is a part of the discussions with the B1G and the handouts that each of these schools get from network contracts, if you don't have a product out there, then you become irrelevant in the TV landscape.
In other words, you were playing with fire with the Chicago, Washington, D.C., Philly, New York markets. The whole reason why you expanded out to the East Coast was to get those markets to carry the Big Ten network. And you're playing with fire as to whether you're going to get those people back. Yep. Because there's an ACC network now that's competing against the Big Ten network in the Eastern Seaboard with New York and DC. So yeah, that's a great point. And I've said all along the Big Ten network was probably soiling their drawers, trying to figure out what they're going to put on.
Yep. Whoa. Mental image not needed. Yes, it was a crapshoot for them. We understand this.
But I'm telling you.
You bring up the Fun Belt. The Fun Belt's playing fantastic football right now. So all these games have been on the air. I mean, they've been fun to watch, and that's something that kind of alludes to your point about losing fans. I mean, I've watched some really good
losing prospective student athletes, because you're seeing these schools performing well out of the blocks. And what does this say for an Arkansas State? What does it say for a Coastal Carolina? What does it say for those programs that now have you're getting this national exposure, and you're now being added to the footprint?
And then you look at somebody like Coastal, who went into Lawrence and defeated the Jayhawks a couple weeks ago, withstood a very tough Campbell team and really put some points on the board. Coastal is a legit team right now, and if a mid-tier recruit is looking at that, they can go right into South Carolina and start.
Field ever.
I mean, you got to think about that. I mean, the Chanticleers are getting much, much, much good exposure from this issue with the Pac-10.
Exposure, much good.
Yeah, I'm just hoping the Sun Belt can keep this momentum going. Now the SEC starting out, the Big Ten's going to start up. The Sun Belt did everything right. They had 3 opportunities to go up against the Big 12, and took care of all 3 opportunities. And not only that, 2 of them were dominant efforts. And then Louisiana having a tough game, and this is a segue, by the way, Phil. Louisiana having a tough outing against Georgia State, and yet and you're going to have those in conference games, no matter who the opponent is, and getting it done, and still having somewhat of a national exposure, as did Coastal Carolina on Friday. I just hope the Sun Belt doesn't kind of drift off to the side when these big boys start playing football, because they did everything right. And they're the beneficiary of it, of how college football has been played this year. And we've always talked about the American being the best group of 5 league that should be a Power 5 league. Sunbelt is making their move to be either at number 2 or be on par with the American. Again, they've done everything right, and the 4 of us are familiar with that league. We know how good that league can be.
Yep. They've been
and
good.
Now the nation is finding out, and I just hope they can keep that momentum going as the big boys start playing.
And that's what I was saying. After week 3, there's no way the Big Ten could have waited any longer because there's no way.
It begs the question to me is why didn't they? And this is backseat quarterbacking at this point in time, but why didn't they do what the SEC did or some of the other conferences did and just say, let's push back the start of the season and see where we're at when we get close to that point?
I think it's because Warren pulled the trigger so early. He would have had egg on his face if he did anything different. So I think he had just had to stick to his position until given no more out, and he had no more out now.
And he wasn't listening to some of the seasoned veterans in the Big Ten and the athletic administrator. I mean, the Barry Alvarez's were being ignored.
Yep.
And these people know that conference left and right. And they know what it was like with Jim Delaney there. This would not have happened if Jim Delaney was still the commissioner of the Big Ten.
No, absolutely.
Kevin Warren came from the NFL, and I get his Roger Goodell was kind of his mentor, and Roger Goodell yeah, exactly. And there's not much difference as far as their administrative skills. I mean, think about it. Roger Goodell would probably has always made those kind of decisions without really consulting the Rooney family or the Mara family. Mm-hmm. I mean, Kevin Warren went on his own and just did it his way, and it's cost him.
And how many times has Jolly Roger been 3 days late and like $10 short? I mean,
every time.
If he's your mentor standard, yeah, you need a better mentor,
a better standard.
The good thing to come out of all this is most college football programs are showing us that the game can be played. That's despite a lot of campuses around the country dealing with outbreaks due to some of the kids not being exactly the most responsible in the world, which is another story for another different podcast.
Another show.
Yeah. But what we're seeing is the games that are being played are being able to be managed. There are not significant issues, and we're seeing some good football. This week is a prime example. Probably the best game I've seen. Well, the best game I've seen, and I only saw a little bit of it. Miami with a huge win over Louisville this week.
Derek King, man.
They look like a different team.
To the angle of out. Diving for the pylon. Touchdown, Miami.
Not even just a little bit. They look like an entirely different team.
Well, what's been the issue with Miami the last 3 years? And it's been the quarterback position. Mm-hmm. They have not had a consistent quarterback. They got a seasoned veteran in Derek King. This guy was legit at Houston. He just didn't see eye to eye with Dana Hogerson.
Yeah, a lot of folks don't.
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. And that's how he ended up in Miami. And now, coupled with him and bringing Rhett Lashley in, those two have meshed. Well, now what are you seeing? You're seeing a resurgence in Miami's offense. And there's some really good young players that the Hurricanes have on the offensive end of the ball. I was really impressed with Miami last night against Louisville because that Louisville offense is pretty good. In fact, that team is pretty good. And that's a huge win on the road in conference.
Cunningham again tries to stay alive, is running backwards. Lost the football, and the turnover chain will come out for the third time tonight.
So I guess they're going to get a little bit of a push now.
And as good as Derek King is, I've been more impressed with Cameron Harris this year. Last night he had 9 carries, 134 yards, and a touchdown, including a 75-yard run. For the season, he's got already almost 300 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yes.
I mean, when you have a running back like that opening up the field for Derek King as well as receiver Brevin Jordan, I mean, that's just – that offense is scary right now.
Yeah, a lot of weapons there, right?
A huge win for them.
And to add another point, it was played in front of a sellout crowd last night of 12,000. That's a sellout crowd.
There's more people
The
there.
Marlins are envious.
There's more people there now at the Kentucky Derby.
Yep.
Yeah, quite a bit more. Couple other games of note this week. We don't need to really get into too much detail about them because they are what they are. Clemson with an easy 49-0 win over the Citadel.
All right. Timeout. I'm using my first timeout here. The thought that Dabo Swinney went to the Citadel coaching staff and said, hey, do you want to do shorter quarters or a running clock in the second half? Are you serious?
That's not uncommon when those situations happen. I mean, that's happened.
Disrespect.
It's happened once already this year. They played 10-minute quarters in the second half. I forget which game it was. I was working a game years ago in Chapel Hill when Carolina, I'm trying to think who they played. It was a FCS school. And I just remember, oh gosh, now his name, Switzer, had a couple of kick returns for touchdowns, and they scored in the 80s, and the coaches got together on the field and said, we're going to do a running clock. So it's not uncommon, John. I mean,
no,
I know it's not uncommon. We did it 1 year. I want to say it was Savannah State, I want to say, down in Tallahassee. I think we did a running clock because it was so far out of hand. It was in the 60s, it was in the 70s, or Delaware State or somebody, I forget. But it did happen in Tallahassee. I know it's not uncommon, but it's just, and I give the Citadel coaching staff all the credit in the world. It's like, no, we came here to play 60 minutes of football. That's what we're going to do. I give Citadel all the credit in the world for doing something like that.
Yeah, and Clemson kind of called off the dogs. That 49 points was all scored in the first half. Can't imagine that second half was a whole lot of fun, as it ended up in a 0-0 tie if you go just by quarter 3 and 4. The other big blowout game of the week,
before we go off that, we got to see on DJ Uiagalelei, who's supposed to be the heir apparent of Trevor Lawrence. 3 carries, 2 touchdowns. I mean, not bad there. I just want to say the name on the air.
I bet you did.
Congratulations, and you said it right, I think.
I'll
take your word for it. You win.
The other big team, the other top 10 team in action, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, they get their second win of the season, 52-0 over South Florida in a game.
What happened to South Florida?
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
The Notre Dame plays a really Wake Forest this week.
Oh, sorry, J-Dub.
Oh, well, another way to christen Truist Field. It's all right.
Oof.
What was it will be a true test, too.
Yes, it will.
But
I approve. But
I think Notre Dame held South Florida to a robust 231 yards of total offense for the entire game.
Very bullish.
To Wilkie's question, though, what has happened to USF?
That's a fall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and in their defense, I mean, you go up against, the Fighting Irish, that's going to be kind of rough, but still, I agree with you. They're not the team they once were.
Yeah, 5 years ago, South Florida and this South Florida are 2 entirely different universes, I believe.
Uh-huh.
Yes, you're right.
You're wrong.
The other team that's making an early impression, and a team that I think is kind of a potential dark horse to get into at least the pick 6, if not sneak into that Final Four, is the Cincinnati Bearcats. Another huge win for them, 55-20 over our friends at Austin.
Boy Reeves, come on, man.
Yep. Brian's okay. He understands how it works. A nice performance by the Bearcats, a team that finished really strong last year, and it seems to have picked up right where they left off. I like them. I like them as the ACC champion. I think they have the potential to run the table.
But what's rough for Austin P is that, their season's over now. They lost. It's like, 3,000 points to 30? Bad way to begin and end a season for the Governors.
Yeah, they gave up 55 points the last 2 weeks, both to Pitt and to Cincinnati. 134 points given up while scoring 37 of their own.
Oof.
Yeah.
I mean, it's FCS versus FBS. I get it, and I understand the why. And when we had Brian on the show a couple weeks ago, it was fun to get the lay of the land up there in Clarksville. I get it. I understand it. But I just wish that there were ways that FCS teams could play more games to help them out with their finances this season.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Wholeheartedly agree with that.
Like Campbell only got 4 games. So it's like they're to get to these places, they're losing more money than they're making this year.
Yeah.
Really, there are a few other decent games this week. Probably the only upset game that surprised a few people, maybe not everybody. Marshall with a 17-7 win over number 23 ranked Appalachian State.
Psych, cuts left, 12-yard touchdown. Good looking play.
Number 23 falls again.
Appalachian State did that to themselves. They could have easily won that game. They missed some like they had a one play. There was a touchdown, would have been a touchdown pass in early the fourth quarter, and before he crossed the end zone, Marshall forced a fumble and got it for a touchback. He missed a field goal. Yeah, I mean Appalachian State is a strong team that should have beaten Marshall, but give Marshall credit. The Thundering Herd, withstood it and they came out victorious.
And Marshall their run defense was fantastic against a pretty talented App State rushing attack.
Held them under 100 yards.
Yeah, and great win for Doc Holliday, a coach who really flies under the radar. Yep. He's done some really good things at Marshall. And, great win for the Thundering Herd, and App State's got some work to do.
And if everything holds up, Marshall should probably go into the top 25, and Appalachian State's probably not going to be in there next week.
Speaking of Sun Belt teams, we kind of briefly mentioned it at the beginning of the show. Louisiana Raging Cajuns with a comeback win, 34.
How'd that go in your household?
At Georgia State.
We're fighting Jake DeLones.
How'd that go in your household, Phil?
We were kind of keeping up with the scores. We were driving back from Florida yesterday afternoon, and she was super happy to see that.
Well, super happy to the second half, but not the first half.
Yeah, because they were at one point. State was up 21-7 in the third quarter, and the Cajuns turned it up a notch and took care of business. Nice performance by Levi Lewis, 21 for 37, 279, and a pair of touchdown passes. Elijah Mitchell with a huge running day, 16 for 164 and a couple of touchdowns as well.
And the winning touchdown in overtime.
Game would remain tied at 28, so we had to overtime. Georgia State would go with a field goal early, so a touchdown would win it, and it does just that.
Just a wee bit of hangover from Iowa State to begin that game. But, I mean, Billy Napier, his crew is tough and talented. This is my favorite for the Sun Belt. And as I said last week, or maybe it was on the X, that Billy Napier has now auditioned for an SEC job. And when one comes open, he's going to be on the short list.
Yep. And you got to think about
at the top of that short list.
The Raging Cajuns actually started the second half, ran off 21 straight points, and kudos to the Raging Cajuns. This is the first time they've been ranked since World War II. So
1943.
So good job for Louisiana Lafayette.
Yeah, we're going to find out what they've got the next 2 weeks. Next week, my house is going to be in turmoil as they face off against my Georgia Southern Eagles, and Louisiana follows that game up with a trip up to Boone for the Appalachian State Mountaineers. Yep. Two games that probably will determine the fate of the Sun Belt this season, guys.
Yeah, I'll track down Frank Solkowski to get the Southern point of view after that game happens.
Yep.
The only other game that really jumped off the board to me, a UCF with a nice performance, 49-21, a good win over Georgia Tech in Atlanta.
Took them a while.
Yep.
Well, go ahead.
Lots of talk that UCF's going to skyrocket up the ratings for this. I don't know about that. I think Georgia Tech's better. I don't know that they're necessarily good. A solid win, though, for the Knights, a team always looking to get a win over a Power 5 team.
But you have to look at that. The top teams. Only one ranked team lost this week. So I don't see UCF skyrocketing anywhere. Of course, polls don't really mean a whole hill of beans in week 2, 3 anyway. So, but I don't see them going much higher than maybe 11, 12.
No, and that was kind of the next subject that I wanted to get into.
You're welcome with the transition.
Thank you.
Well, let's not forget Oklahoma State's performance against Tulsa, because
they
with
tripped
Spencer
and fell.
Sanders going down, that is a big problem for OSU. They went through two other quarterbacks. Shane, let me get my glasses.
Shane
on.
Illingworth.
Illingworth came in and really was a better match for Mike Gundy's offense, and they relied way too much on Chuba Hubbard, and the Golden Hurricane knew that.
I'm a man. I'm 40.
So, and that was the only Big 12 game in town.
Yeah.
So they have not made a really good impression, other than Oklahoma and Texas, to begin this 2020 season. But there's some adjustments that are going to have to be made with Spencer Sanders' ankle injury. Is anything more serious?
I was also interested to see when Wallace he missed had a knee injury last year. He only had one target yesterday, 1 or 2 targets. So I'm like, the one-dimensional Oklahoma State offense needs to find a way to at least get Wallace in play, because that was a tough game. I mean, you would think a 16-7 victory over somebody like the Golden Hurricane, you would think that would have been a wider differential even with the injury to Sanders.
Yeah. 35 first half yards for Chuba Hubbard. He went 27 for 93.
Not bad, but not exactly something that a Heisman Trophy candidate makes in a statement.
Not very Chuba, no.
But the Cowboys have West Virginia next week, so that'll be an interesting test.
Take the over.
That'll be a big test.
Real quick before we wrap things up here in the first block of the show, as we cross well into the 20-minute mark here, couple games got postponed. North Carolina had to sit out. Their game got PPD'd.
Game is officially canceled according to the folks at ESPN there, Phil.
Yeah, I know. My computer went a little bit too far forward in scrolling, and I lost my page.
And we're
with
still
that.
number 12 in the country. That's all that matters.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you, Mac.
Mac Brown had a lot to say about that yesterday.
I bet he did.
In the BYU Army game also postponed. Two teams that were technically ranked, BYU 21, Army 22.
That would have been the best game of the week.
That would have been very interesting. I loved that matchup, and I hated to see that one get PPD.
Me too.
I hope they get to reschedule it or find a way to make it happen before the season's over. It would be a lot of fun for all of us. My team, the Georgia Southern Eagles, their game against Florida Atlantic got postponed. We mentioned earlier that Houston and Baylor got postponed. Baylor
and Fox got so. I mean, it was a great idea to twist from that. But what do you think the conversations were like in Lipstick City when this came across the wire that this one had to be, then that one had to get PPD'd for their Big 12, their Big Fox Saturday game?
Before or after they got their heads out of their hands?
That. It was their holy bleep moment for the week.
I said the Red Wolves got postponed against Central Arkansas as well.
Yeah.
Because of
how was it phrased? Because of a certain group, a depth group.
It was something really weird that I couldn't follow.
My guess is it was because it was somewhere in the trenches, somewhere in the offensive or defensive line. They had too many points of concern, and they just didn't have enough depth if they decided to play.
Yeah. It was something. It was very poorly worded.
Yeah.
But I'm not a PR guy.
No.
Speaking of PR, I'll go ahead and start promoting here the second half of the show as we wrap things up here in the first half of the review. Coming up in the second half of the show, we talk the return of the SEC and possibly a few other conferences. Could we perhaps make peak college football here as we hit into November? Plus, a certain coach at a certain university who made headlines again for reasons that he probably didn't want to. And I want to talk a little bit more about the NCAA allowing the FCS to have a playoff in the spring.
Playoffs?
In the spring.
Whatever.
That more when we return for the second half of the review. You are listening to the review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Go to our Twitter page at OSG Sports for a comment, rant, or just whatever's on your mind about college football.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
The most important decision you can make right now is what do you stand for, Danny? Goodness or badness?
Congratulations, folks. You have made it to the second block of the review. This is The Review, the college football podcast on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. Again, we are the online sports guys. This is our show. We talk college football, the week that was, the weekend that was, and a little bit of a look ahead sometimes at the week upcoming. Guys, in the first half of the show, we talked about a lot of the weekend games and Big Ten stuff and COVID and all that other stuff. The thing to look forward to this coming week, perhaps the biggest news of the college football week, is going to be the return of the king. The SEC comes back. We got SEC football this weekend.
The big boys are back.
Yes, they are.
Does this change the excitement level for you, and should it change the excitement level for other people now that most everybody has returned?
No.
I'm kind of excited about it, but what I want to see is, I think the SEC played it smart as far as getting ready for the week, the first week, and delaying it as far as they did. Mm-hmm. And I say that because we talked about on the X and on last week's review show as well, is how the first big week of the Power Five, things were sloppy. Yep. The line play was atrocious. Timing was off, and a lot of it is because no spring ball, especially with new coaching staffs who couldn't install what they needed to install to their players. So you had all those factors, the limited practice with COVID, concerns over that. There's just so many distractions, and you saw the SEC. I'm curious to see, because I think like the Alabamas and the LSUs, the factory teams, I guess we'll call them, will probably look the same, and some of the Vanderbilts and hope not the Arkansas, but we'll see. The Kentuckys,
we'll find out
they may fall in that category of being timing being off, line play being atrocious, that kind of thing. I'm just curious to see what the first week of the SEC is going to be like, but I'm excited about it.
And you got to think about this one thing as as a player, the one thing that really frustrated me was that when you don't have this practice time and you don't have this time to perfect things, your offensive defense is going to be okay in its own right. But special teams usually is where these teams lose, like poorly covered kickoff teams or punt coverages or blocked field goals. I mean, that could be the difference between a win or a loss for some of these teams. And I'm interested to see how that works. But as far as my excitement level, I'm more, instead of seeing full teams, I'm interested in seeing bits and pieces. Like I want to see Kyle Trask, for Florida. I want to see who's going to replace Lynn Bowden in Kentucky. I want to see, can Kellen Mond rebound? I want to see what Mac does in Alabama. I want to see if Jarrett Guarantano can actually put together a decent season in Tennessee. I'm looking for more individual players.
Yeah, who's going to be a quarterback at Georgia?
And I'm looking to see how Felipe Franks fits in that Arkansas system. They just named him a team captain, and he got real emotional about that. So those are the things. Also, LSU, to me, with so many graduate, of course, Joe Burrow's not there. They had players that opted out. They didn't have a full spring with all this new personnel coming in and with returners opting out. What are they going to look like at home against Mississippi State? I mean, that's the big question to me, is what LSU is going to look like in week 1.
And this is another thing for me. You talk about how many people they lost. I think they lost like 11 or 12 starters from their offensive and defensive teams. Are they ranked as high as they are just because they won the national championship last year? Because they have so many question marks on their team this year.
Well, yeah, I could go into a whole discourse about how stupid preseason rankings are because they don't mean anything in the big picture until you actually play a game. And yeah, to answer your question, they are ranked in the top 10 because they're LSU.
I mean, for me, I think that if you're a factory team, much like what we've seen the last handful of weeks, I think if you're going to get to a factory team, you're going to get them early. I think if you're a team that's going to play an SEC team, or if you're a lower tier SEC team going up against a team that is anticipated to be higher in the standings or be ranked, I think much like, when you're coming out of the blocks, you better get them early or you're not going to get them at all. So if you're going to see goofiness, it's going to be in the first couple of weeks with these teams that we're seeing coming in from the SEC.
And I'm looking at 2 teams right now, John, as you say that, Arkansas and Missouri, both with new coaching staffs coming in. They didn't have a spring to install their offense or their defense with their new coordinators. And again, practice time was limited because of COVID concerns and unity walks. And okay, so Mizzou's got Alabama coming in to Columbia, and I can tell you this is the biggest game that's probably been in Columbia in probably 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Alabama, you're talking about getting them early. I don't see them being any different than what they were like back in November last year. Even though they've had some personnel moves, they just reload.
Yeah.
Georgia's a different thing. I mean, they're unstable at the quarterback position. Arkansas, I'm going to give them a puncher's chance because they do have a veteran quarterback from Felipe Franks coming in, who's obviously has won over the locker room. And you got a coach in Sam Pittman that knows that program at Georgia. So if I'm a Bulldog fan, I've got a lot of nervousness going into that game in Fayetteville. I'm not saying Arkansas is going to win it. And if they do, I'll be ecstatic. But
I think this one could be a grinder, and I think it's going to be it could be the under. I think that Arkansas covers, and I think it's going to be a grinder and very, very frustrating to start out if you're a Georgia fan.
So you're saying there's a chance?
It'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see how Georgia rebounds because you don't have Jake Fromm, you don't have DeAndre Swift, you lost Jamie Newman to COVID. Is JT Daniels able to play? Is he still hobbled?
Even if he is, he's not been medically cleared.
That's what I'm saying.
He still may not end up winning the job because apparently from all the reports in the Georgia practice sessions, redshirt freshman or is he sophomore, DeJuan Mathis has been turning heads left and right in camp. And a lot of people seem to think that might be who your starting quarterback is for the Bulldogs come game 1.
All right,
I wouldn't look past Kirby Smart, but Sam Pittman has knowledge of that system. I wouldn't touch this over and under line with a 10-foot pole. I'm going to watch it, and I wouldn't touch it at all because I think it could go either way.
Speaking of gambling, question for the floor for you guys, and a little promotion here because every Tuesday at 4:20 I'm on Bill Shanks' show in Macon. Talking ACC football, but he's a Georgia guy. I'm an Arkansas guy. He's also going to be on the X this week. So do I make a wager with Bill?
Duh.
Of course you're going to have to get points.
Yeah, you're going to have to get something out of it. It's not a straight bet, but you got to get something on your end to swing it. But the answer is yes, but you got to get something on your end. Nothing straight.
All right. Sorry, folks. I had to do a little business there.
Well, the one game, there's actually 2 games I'm looking at right now is potential issues. Kentucky at Auburn. I think that game, depending on what Stoops does to replace Lynn Bowden at quarterback, I think Kentucky has a shot at Auburn. I don't think it's. I wouldn't take the over under here either, but I think it's going to be a slugfest. But the other game I'm thinking about, you're talking about catching a factory team early. Mississippi State coming into an LSU. I think going into Red Stick, I think they have a shot there of
With
upsetting the Tigers.
The Pirate and Baton Rouge.
I think they have a shot.
If he goes 1-0 with a win in Baton Rouge to start off his career in the SEC, we will never, ever hear the end of it.
And the press conference will be gold.
It'll be golden.
That's what I'm saying. If the Pirate wasn't there at Mississippi State, I wouldn't give them a shot. But you never bet against a Mike Leach offense. You just don't do it.
No,
guys, we got to move on here to some other stuff.
No.
Lots of rumblings here that we might see some Pac-12 action before 2020 comes to an end.
Whatever.
After all that we've gone through.
Whatever.
State of California giving the universities some leeway in terms of allowing games to be played if certain criteria is met.
Sure.
Is this something you see happening that the Pac-12 is going to play and try to sandwich in a few games?
Does the Pac-12 have any football teams?
Yeah, no, I can tell you this: UCLA and Southern Cal are lobbying hard for it right now.
Oh, yeah.
And once, Southern Cal was that's the football program in that league, and they were being very passive about it. It was like, whatever. And again, peer pressure, seeing what's going on with the other leagues, and now they follow the Big Ten, and the Big Ten has decided they're going to play. So Kevin Scott or. Not Kevin Scott.
Larry
Scott. Thank you. Kevin Warren, Larry.
Kevin Warren, Larry Scott, same thing. 6 1 half dozen of the other.
I mean, he's feeling the pressure now. The other factor is Oregon's got to get approval as well from their state health officials, whether Oregon or Oregon State does, whether they can host a team, and they want to do it looks like an 8-game model starting the weekend of Halloween, and
irony.
Yes, irony, and get a championship game, which no one attends anyway. So you can.
Well, and then the other issue that you're going to have to keep an eye on between now and the proposed start of the wildfires that are going on in the Pacific time zone. So, because you've had baseball games that have been shifted from the Pacific Northwest down to the other opponent, so you're going to have to be fluid where that's concerned too.
Well, that was one thing I was going to bring up as far as that's. If there was going to be a silver lining that the Pac-12 was not playing right now, it would have been that, because the air quality has been next to zero. So that would have been an issue for rescheduling and moving and stuff. So maybe by Halloween, the air quality will be a little better.
Yeah, and one of the options, too, is to move some games to SoFi and to Allegiant, since SoFi is a roof.
Makes sense.
And Allegiant is available. So
Mark Davis would love the company.
But again, going back to what we said in the first block, I mean, Big Ten's back, Pac-12 is going to come back, Mountain West is going to come back. These, the door's open, they're coming back.
Yeah.
And the MAC is discussing it now.
The MACtion, baby.
Return of the MAC.
We've got some action.
The Council of Presidents met yesterday about it. I love that. The Council of Presidents.
The Council of Presidents. They want their Tuesday time slot. They need their exposure, bottom line.
Yep, same. They don't want to lose recruits or exposure either. So,
yeah, and really, if those guys all jump back in, you basically have a full college football season at that point in time.
Yeah.
I think we all kind of knew that was going to happen in the back of our minds.
Oh, yeah.
But
they're doing it, so we better do it, so we don't get left behind. It's what we talked about in the first block.
I'm going to point out one thing. I want to point out one thing. The Mountain West really missed an opportunity here.
No doubt.
I mean, they could have owned the West Coast.
Definitely.
And I mean that because their programs are probably on par with the Pac-12 right now, with the exception of Southern Cal maybe. But they missed an opportunity. They could have been that Sun Belt.
Uh-huh.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We talked about them the way they kind of went behind where the Pac-12 and the Big Ten were going. They could have been the American out there. I mean, you think about the spacing. You're automatically socially distanced out there, and you have all these teams and the lack of exposure. Their numbers are already down anyway. And I agree with you, Wilkie. I think that's a good point. They could have owned the exposure out there, and just imagine the recruiting influence it could have had on them. And I agree they missed a golden opportunity.
Yeah.
And looking way ahead, and I'm jumping ahead here. Couple of months, with all these teams jumping back into play, there's still not going to be a bowl system because
why not? ESPN Events has a lot of this inventory. They got to do something with it. They're not just going to run that. They're not going to run the 1997 Holiday Bowl.
They have not canceled any of the bowl games either.
Just the Redbox is the only one has come across.
Right.
Redbox is the only one that has said anything. When half of your bowl games are associated with ESPN events, which are programming and sponsorship opportunities and a boatload of revenue for the four-letter, when I think there's one bowl game with the NFL Network and one bowl game with CBS, and there might be another one with CBS Sports Network, that's 3 of the 47. And so 44 and half of them are attached, or more than half of them, I think 23 of the 44 are attached to ESPN events. They need the inventory. It is sponsor dollars once again. It is a different kind of peer pressure. Yeah. It's at the end of the season. ESPN needs the money. You're going to have bowl games.
You may not have the full slate of bowl games, but I guarantee you there'll still be bowl games.
There'll be bowl games played after the championship game, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to be at the end of January, and we're probably watching the Bahamas Bowl.
Hey, I'll take it. It gives us stuff to talk about.
And can you imagine college bowl games around the same time as the Super Bowl? That's a potential thing to have. Those games still playing
they will not go up against the Super Bowl.
No. But you'll have ancillary programming around it. You'll still have that. You'll still have everything leading into it. And as long as your college,
for that matter, they won't do it against the NFC in the AFC Championship.
No. You'll have it like a normal bowl schedule. You'll have it on like Thursdays and Fridays and stuff like that, because the NFL Network will have stopped doing the Thursday night games by that point. I think they stop it at a certain point. It won't be on Saturdays.
When the regular season ends in the end of December, beginning of January.
But what I'm trying to say is that you're going to have the people are going to try to get their money. Like, to quote Johnny Manziel, right? You got to get the money, right?
Yeah.
And if it plays into mid to late February, they could potentially, depending on scheduling and travel and who they get, it could be even after the Super Bowl. I mean, I could see this weird schedule, people want to try to get the bowl game in. You don't have to fit them all in the 2 weeks at the end of the year now, right? So you can move into January, February. I wouldn't say into March, but
no, because then you're getting into basketball and a postseason.
March Madness and college bowl games. Wow,
that would be bizarro world if we had that.
We're getting the FCS in April.
Yeah, that's what I was getting. That's where I was going to kind of go with this conversation as we kind of wind it down here. The NCAA announcing this week the FCS can play their playoffs in April.
All right, we got to come up with a branding name for that, because if you got March Madness, what do you got in April?
Spring Fling.
There you go.
April showers.
It's your CFB Spring Fling. It's the FCS Spring Fling. However you want to call it.
All right. Market
Easter
that.
idiocy. Yeah.
You need to copyright that, market it, so we can get some dollars from the NCAA.
Yeah, we're all about the promotional money. We need anything we can get here, guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Last item on the agenda for me this week. John will love this one.
Oh, God.
The Florida State Seminoles make the news yet again as head coach Mike Norvell is diagnosed with COVID. Thankfully, it's nothing serious. He's not going to be missing a huge amount of time. He's not.
We are the schlep rock of college football in 2020. That's the only way that I can describe it.
Could he have possibly had COVID last week that would explain some of his play calling? Just saying.
No, it was just horrible play calling.
Yeah, it was. I'm there with
they
John.
just say you get dementia when you have that, don't they?
Yeah, you lose smell and taste, maybe brains. I don't know.
Rational thought.
Yeah.
But you're making an assumption there, Phil.
That he had rational thought to begin with. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Man, this is a rough room if you're a Seminole fan.
I'm the alum. I can do this.
But if you think about what Mike Norvell did in Memphis,
you don't have Bobby Petrino as your coach.
I mean,
right,
you think about the weapons he had in Memphis. He's in Tallahassee now. Norvell's offense should translate well for the Seminoles. It just didn't find purchase last week, and the fans are already up in arms. College ought to be fired.
How's that coach student athlete association going ever since the beginning, huh?
Yeah, having your offense translate is fine if you've got the athletes to translate it, but if you don't, you get Florida State.
Our offense needs the Google Translator for offense when it comes to college football right now. We need Google Translate, and we can't find it. We're always hitting the wrong button trying to find Google Translate. Or it's a language in the URL bar that says does not translate Florida State.
Just adopt the Memphis Tigers this year because that's what you're going to see next year and the year beyond as far as offense with Florida State. And it's going to come together. But you didn't have a spring practice. You had a limited fall camp.
I mean, Norvell is an up-and-coming coach, and I think that was a good hire for Florida State.
I do too.
I do think it will happen.
Odell Haggins.
You're not wrong with that, but I do think that Norvell brings with him a background, a history that
resume is good.
Give him a couple years to recruit his own players there. Yeah, you'll be fine.
Yeah, and he kept Odell on the staff, so that's a big, bold move right there. Great move.
Yay!
Guys, you got anything else you want to touch on here before we wrap things up for this
you
week?
Guys decided to bring Mike Norvell into the show. I think I'm good.
JW, you wanted to mention Cade Mays.
Yes. Free Cade Mays. We said a couple weeks ago about how he was denied the ability to transfer immediately from Georgia to Tennessee. NCAA has approved his waiver. Now we just have to wait for the SEC to officially free Cade Mays. So now we've got Trey Smith and Cade Mays on that Tennessee front line. I'm very excited to see that happen. And if we can, actually have a consistent quarterback play under Jeremy Pruitt, I think having Cade Mays active for the Volunteers is a huge thing in Knoxville.
I like it too. I want to see that fan base back to being loud and howling, and seeing Neyland going crazy on a Saturday.
They're only a 3.5 point favorite going to the fairgrounds right now. Heading into the game against South Carolina, though.
I always hate playing the Gamecocks because Will Muschamp has always played Tennessee hard. This will be a game. I think this is going to be coming down to who makes the fewest mistakes on Saturday.
Oh, that's an awful stadium to play in, too. Oh, my God, that's a horrible place. Mm-hmm. Having worked a couple Georgia versus South Carolina games there, that place is a nightmare. There's no room. It's packed tight. It's loud. It's sweaty. It's hot.
I don't anticipate that being a problem this year.
That sounds like Oklahoma State Stadium. I had the same issue there.
You can't even shoot in the end zone at South Carolina because there's no end zone to shoot in.
You got a hedge.
Yeah. Well, at least you can in Stillwater, but you had to walk behind in front of the front row of the stands to get across to the other end zone.
Yep. Well, they're not used to having a big media presence in Columbia, so.
Bang.
Ooh.
But we digress.
On that note, we should wrap things up.
I think so. Yeah, let J-Dub have the last shot fired. Promote the X, Wilkie, before we get out of here.
Well, we got the College Football X coming your way this week. John Nelson will have an X Factor for us, and we'll decide what that is after this podcast. Bill Shanks will be on talking SEC. We're going to talk a little rivalries. Miami, Florida State, they're playing. Obviously, that rivalry is kind of shrunk quite a bit. But Texas and Texas Tech play for the Chancellor Spurs. So we'll mention those two things, and we'll just talk college football. Remember, it is a work in progress.
Gentlemen, thanks for joining us this week. Time to say goodbye to all our family, MICKEYMOUSE. For the full Online Sports Guys team, I am OSG Phil. This is The Review. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We will be back next week with more college football fun and shenanigans. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.